started. Okay. So, where we left on the last session was I will just start sharing my screen.
Yes.
You are able to see my screen, right?
Yeah, sir.
Okay, perfect. So, the last session that we discussed on the what are my DDL commands under SQL, there are multiple different categories that are there. One is data definition language and data manipulation language and data query language and data control language. Out of that, under the data definition language, we are having create, alter, drop, truncate. Create, alter, drop, all these comes under the DDL part of it. And also we learned how we can go ahead and create the table. The syntax for the creation of the table is create table, table name, and then the corresponding column names, and then the corresponding the data types. If there are any constraint that you want to define, then you can define as a primary key, foreign key, all those relationships, and then create the table. And once you create the table, you can alter the table. So with this example, what we learned is we added a new column to the table called student list test table. So that also I demonstrated in the last class. And then drop, so create, alter, drop, all these different statements, how you can write, how you can make the changes on the table that you are created on the database. All these things that you guys learnt. And then what are my DML commands? DML is nothing but the data manipulation language. Whatever the data that you are loaded into database and the table, that can be manipulated using the data manipulation language. So what are my data manipulation language? Insert, update, delete, and truncate. All these different commands that you can use under data manipulation language, and you can make the changes on the data that is loaded into the table. So one is insert into table, the table names and the column names, and then the corresponding values that you're going to pass, so that you can insert the rows into the table that you are created. And then if I want to update a particular row of the table that you are loaded, then you can use the update table name, set the column name which you want to update the value, and then the corresponding where clause, which particular row that you want to update, that you're going to specify in the where class, right? And delete is the option where you can delete the data that is present in the table row by row. You can delete a particular row, or you can delete entire set of a data using the delete, right? Delete from table name, delete from table name where the student id is equal to 61. So I want to delete the row which is having the student id as 61 in the table. And then the last one is truncate statement, where you want to truncate the entire set of a data that is present in the table. Then there is an option that has been provided in SQL Server with the data manipulation language, is called truncate table name, that will truncate entire set of a data that is present in the table, right? So these are the things that we learned. The other two parts of it is, as I said, there is a data query language, which where you want to select a particular data that is present in the table, then you can use that data query language. So I already demonstrated this example. As I said, there is a table that is created as a student test, and you want to select and view the data that is present in that table. Then there is a command called select star from table, right? If you see execute this table, you want to execute under school, because this table is present under school database, it is not present in the master, right? So if you execute now, you are able to see the table, right? So the select command is used to view the data that is present in the table. So that is comes under data query language. Okay, so the last part is data control language. If at all I want to give any permission to access the particular table, particular database, then you can grant the access. And if you want to hide or maintain the security of a table that should not be accessed by Halaya or someone else, then I can revoke the access for that person with a role identification and role creation, and also specify the role access for that particular user. So those things we can able to pass the statement using the data control language. So hope you guys clear what are my ddls, what are my dmls, what are my dqls, and what are my data control languages. Sorry, somebody has some question.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Sir, how to specify not null constraint to other attributes? Sir?
That we gonna learn what are my different data types, what are my constraint. I will, there is a topic that is we're gonna take it up in the next session or somewhere, where we will learn what are my constraint, what are my data types that is present in the SQL server. We will discuss that. So
Okay.
you are just want to know how you gonna define the not null constraint on the particular column, correct?
Yeah, sir.
Yeah, we will go through that, no worries on that. Okay.
Okay.
So next part of it, so let's get into the day 2. Okay, day 3, sorry. I am just getting into the training notes. I'm just want to modify this, have it here as day 3. Okay, so what are the things that we're gonna learn today? So we were gonna learn how you can create a database in the SQL server, and what are the different data types that are available in the SQL server. And just now he asked, right, what are, how you can define a particular not null constraint. So what are the constraints that you can define on a particular table in SQL Server. We're gonna learn what are the different constraints that are available, and how yesterday already we discussed how you can create a table, select the table. Those things we can skip. But next one we can see how the distinct works, where clause, and or not operators, and like and between operators. What are the different operators that are present in the SQL Server, right? So all these things we're gonna learn. So we already discussed what is the database, right? Database is a collection of data which can be stored in the form of tables. Either it is in the dbms format, or in the rdbms format, relational database management. You want to build the relationship between the tables, and you can create the tables and form the database, right? So how you can create the database? There is a statement that I can just show you. So far whatever we discuss is just about the creation of the table, right? But I want to create the database itself, right? First of all, if before creating a table, we need to have a database in our SQL server installed, right? So any company which works on the project, so whenever they install the SQL server, thereafter that they will create the database that is required to run the business, right? So example, they are building the SBI software, right? SBI bank software. So they have to create the database to create the tables under that particular database. Example, bank has a multiple modules of the tables, right? Either it is having the employees table, it is having the departments table, it is having the loans table, it is having the credit card loans table. All these different segregations of the businesses will be stored as a table data, right, in the database. Before creating these tables, it has to have a database on top of it, right? So example, I need to create a database called as the SBI. So how are we going to create database name. So in this example I will show you how you're going to create the table, sorry, database, right? So you can run this query. So currently I don't have any database such as hospital here, right? If I run this particular create database name, we were able to create the database. See here, command is successfully executed. If I go and refresh the databases, it should show me the new database that we just created, that is called hospital. See here, we can see the hospital database which was not present earlier, just before this, right? Now we are able to see database. Under this database we can create n number of tables based on our business requirement, right? Currently it doesn't have any tables under that particular hospital. If you go to hospital database and collapse the table section, you will be not able to see anything. It is just the system tables, file system tables, external and graph tables. These are all the system defined. When you are install the SQL server, at that point of a time, the system tables will be get created by the SQL server engine itself. So these are all not the user defined tables. User defined tables is nothing but the tables that we gonna create, as a developer is gonna create. Me, you, or someone will create the databases, sorry, tables on the database, right? Those are called as user defined tables. Those are not the system defined tables. Whenever you install the SQL server, along with that the tables will be created by the SQL server engine itself. That is called as system tables. Okay, so just I showed you the example how you can create the your own database before you getting started with creation of a tables or anything. Okay, you guys understood? Okay, and let's understand how you can see the uh, whenever you create a database, it should be having some memory allocation within the database, right, within the SQL server. So example, I want to see particular database size, how it is, what is the database size that is being present for that particular database. Then there is a command that is available in SQL server called as underscore space used. If you, this is a system command, system defined command, if you run that, it will show us the databases and the corresponding sizes for that. See here, currently I am under the sorry, school database. If I run the space, sorry, sp underscore space used, it will show us what is the database name and what is the database size and what is the unallocated space, right? So what is the database entire database size? 16 MB. And what is the unallocated space? Whatever the allocated space, that is already allocated within this 16 MB, and still that is left with the unallocated part, that is called as unallocated space, which is 5.23 MB, right? So that's what it is shown here. What is the reserved at and what is the data that is stored? 1000 KB. And index size. Index is nothing but the what are my indexes that is there on that particular database is called index size. Okay. Unused databases. This is little bit oriented towards the database administration part, but the you have to remember there is a command that is available in SQL Server, sp underscore space used, which will help us to understand what is my memory space allocation for particular database that is being created on the databases, SQL Server, basically, right? So in this case, I just showed you the school, but if I want to see what is the database size for the new, just I created one, right, hospital. Okay, I just changed the server, sorry, database name connection to hospital. Now if I run the space used command, it will show us hospital database size. See here, it will show us what is my database size, 16 MB, unallocated space is 5.51 MB, reserved is so and so KB, and data is so and so KB. So what you learned? You learned how you can create the database and how you can learn the, I mean, see the databases size that is present on the databases. Okay, and you want to rename, example, you want to rename the database which you created. I mean to say, just for the sake of understanding, there is a requirement which you created a database called as a hospital, just you created, right? But there is a requirement that is came up, say that this hospital, whatever the database name that has been given is not the one right one, we need to change that to some SBI database. In that case, what I can do, there is a command that is available in SQL Server. You can change it. There is a command which is available, sp, this is again system defined command, sp underscore rename db. If I write this, and then you have to write the old database name which you want to change to some other name, right? In this case, the old database name is hospital, which is already present, but my requirement is I want to change the hospital database name to SBI. Then the command that you need to write is sp underscore rename db, old database name which is present, and you want to rename it as a new database which is SBI. If I write like this and execute this command, it will update the database name which is there as the hospital to SBI. See, the when you execute that command, it showed the message saying that the database name SBI has been set. Right now, if I refresh the databases, which I can see here, right, I can see here hospital now. But if I refresh after the execution of the command which I just executed, the rename the DB, it will change to SBI. Let's check it out whether it's updated or not. See here, the hospital got changed to SBI. So what you need to remember and learn, there is a command that is available in SQL Server. If at all I want to rename the DB name for the one which is existing to some other new name, then you can use the sp underscore rename DB. Okay, and there is a requirement. I don't want the database. I want to drop the database itself. Just how you dropped the table yesterday, there is a requirement to drop the database itself, the new fresh database you want to be create after the dropping the database. Then there is a command that is available in SQL Server, drop database name. So if you execute this, the currently existing, there is no hospital database, you need to drop the SBI. Let's drop SBI. Okay, so is currently we are having a SBI here, right? If I execute drop database name, the SBI will go away. Cannot drop the SBI because it is currently in use. Currently in use because I am currently in the SBI database itself, right? So I am using this database, hence I am not able to drop this. But I can go back to human resources, some other database, and I can try and drop this database. It should work. Let's check it out. See, command got successfully executed. Now if I refresh, the SBI will not be able to visible because I dropped the entire database itself. See, I just dropped the database that I do not want to have in my SQL Server. So you learned how you can create the database, how you want to visible the size of the database and rename the databases, and also you can drop the databases. And one more command that is available, sp underscore help db. If you see this command, right, if I run this command, right, what it may give you, it will give you entire databases that is present on the SQL Server. You can see here, right, in the left side of the corner, you can see what are the different databases that is available in the SQL Server currently in this local system, right? One is system databases, snapshots, and then the adventure works, and then the human resources, my local school, test new 123. All these different databases that has been created in attached to this particular SQL Server, right? If I run the command sp underscore help db, it will display all the databases that is present in the SQL Server. Let's check it out. Run the sp underscore help db command, which will give you all databases that is being created on the this SQL Server. See here, it gave you the adventure works, human resources, master, model, msdb, my local, school, tempdb, test new, all these databases which is already created and stored in the SQL Server which I am running for. So it will also show you the who is the owner of that. SA is the already system databases. These are all comes with the SQL Server engine itself, master, model, msdb, and tempdb. Whenever you install a particular SQL Server in your local machines, all these master databases, model, msdb, and tempdb, all these comes with the SQL Server engine database itself. It will created by the SQL Server itself. So hence these owners called as a system admin, that is the owner name called as system admin, which is nothing but the SA, right? If you see other one, right, all the other user databases, if you see here, all user databases are comes with the some name called Avinash. That is nothing but the my local name of the desktop that comes with this name. In your cases, it might be Sanjana, it might be Halaya, it might be Kiran, right? Based on your local machine name, it will show the owner name because it is your local. As I said, this can be utilized only for you. It cannot be utilized as a server because you are not connected and hosted in server, right? So as I said, coming back, the user databases that will comes to user machines names, and if there is a master msdb model and tempdb, these are all system databases that comes with the sql engine, that will be comes with the name called as sa, that is nothing but the system admin owner. Okay, any questions? And there is again one more thing, what are the log files? One is file groups and all will be created whenever you create new databases, right? If you want to see what are the files that has been allocated on a particular database that you are created, then you can run this command sp underscore help db and then the corresponding database name. Example, in this case what I can run is I can run on school, which is already created, right? So if I run sp underscore help db school database, it will show you what are my file groups that has been created on this particular databases. See here, it will show us what are my primary file group, what are my secondary file groups, and the file size, and then the max size and growth, what is the log. All these details you will be able to see with the command called sp underscore help db and then the corresponding database name. Okay, so this is all about the database, how you can create the database and then use database in the sense, example, currently I'm using the human resources, right? Okay, I go to the new window. Okay, and currently I'm into the human resources. If you see here, right, currently I'm seeing this database is created to human resources. If you see here right side, right, this is showing us local host and human resources is the database that you are created, sorry, connected. And whatever the queries that you're going to run, you can run only, you can run and access the tables which are present in human resources alone. Example, there is a table in human resources, let's check it out. Okay, so there is a date data table, correct? So if I run the select statement on this date data table in the human resources, I'm able to see the data. Further, higher date is there is one column and three rows are there, that is displayed when I'm running a particular query in human resources, right? But now the same table I'm trying to access in other database, right? Other database in the sense, let me connect to school database. Okay, in school database I'm able to connect to school database now, right? In school database currently, am I having date data table? Let me check it out. So I don't see any date data table under school, but I'm trying to and hoping that it may access the table that is created in under human resources. I'm trying to access in school database. Will it be possible? Let's see. It is not possible. So because you are connected to other database and you are trying to access that, the data, the table which is not present on that particular database, which is not possible, right? But so one thing that you learned is you are not able to or able to access a particular table which is not present in the same database unless you are connected to that database. Okay, but if I want to change the database to human resources, there is one option in UI. Always you will go and change to human resources or some other databases which you want to connect. That is one way. Okay, but I want to use a statement and then connect to that. Currently I'm in six school database, but I want to change this connection to human resources. How I can change? There is a command, use command, which is there in the SQL server, that is called human resources. Now I want to, my intention is I want to connect to human resources database, right? So use is the syntax and then the database name. If you give like that, and currently I am in school database, here also school, if you see it. But if I use the command use and then the database name, if I select these all together and execute, see, command got successfully executed, which is connected to school got changed to human resources, and below also in the right side you can see it got changed to human resources. Now the my database switched over from school database to human resources by using the command called as the use database name. That command helps us to switch my one databases to another database connection in my SQL windows. Just how we did that, right? Now if I run the data select statement, it should return me the data because I'm connected to human resources. See, this is how you can switch the databases which you are connected in your SQL Server windows when you are doing a development. Okay, so that's the one command which is there. I just that is what mentioned here, and then the you learned what is the drop database, how you can drop the database, and also now we can learn what are the different data types that is present in SQL Server. Okay, let's get into that. So what are all we learned? Create database and rename database and drop databases you learned, and system commands to see the database side size and the details, and also we learned how you can use the use command to switch 1 db to another db with the connection change. These are all things that you learned. Now we can go ahead and learn what are the different data types available in SQL Server. All right. So every DB is logically a collection of objects. As I said, there is every databases will be always having the tables and views and store procedures and indexes. And table is always the logical unit where the actual data is present in the form of rows and columns. So what tables is always consist of? It consists of the rows and then the corresponding columns. And one more thing that you need to know, minimum one column, maximum 1024 columns that can be created on any table. That is one thing. What is that? Maximum minimum one column should be present in the table, and maximum 1024 columns can be created on the table, and there is no limit for the number of rows that you can add into any table. So there is no limitation with respect to the rows, but with respect to the columns, there is one minimum and 1024 maximum columns that you can define. And the row size for each is 8096 bytes with respect to the row size. Okay, and there is some of the commands with the system objects that you can learn later. So select star from sys objects will give you what are all the system defined objects that are present in the SQL Server. If you see, right, if you run this, it will give you list of all the system defined objects, nothing but the tables that are present on the SQL Server. What is system object? System object is whenever a database is or a SQL Server engine is created, okay, installed, not created. Whenever you install the SQL Server engine in your machines or on the server, the SQL Server engine itself will create its system defined tables to serve the or helps the to maintain the tables or to maintain the databases to access the tables, everything to entire maintain these databases. The system also has their own system defined tables to process our databases, right? So those are all called as the system databases. So whenever I run the sys objects, it will give you the entire tables that is present on the SQL server, irrespective of the any databases. Okay, and as I said earlier, any tables that you gonna created by the developer or by me or by you by someone else is are all called as the user defined tables. I told you, in this case dummy, student test, t2, all these tables are created by us, the thing but the developers, which is called as the user defined tables. But if there are tables which is comes under the database itself, comes with the database engine itself, those are all called as the system databases. Okay, that is the difference between system objects and then the user defined objects. Now, what are the different data types that are present in the SQL server? The first thing is, one is numerical, and then the character, and then the date and type. These are the high level classification of data types. In the numerical data types, right, always it comes with the, if you see example here, right, whenever a table creates, it supports whenever a particular table that you created on the database, it's always you can create the 1024 different types of the columns under it, and you can define different types of the data types for that. Example, you can create the employee id column with the integer type, and then employee name column with the character or varchar type. And if there are any hire date or joining date or uh, all these date columns data that you can define with the date types, date data types you can use and create. So those are all the different types of data types that are available. So how you can create a table with the different data types, right? So you create a table, employee id and employee name and salary. Already this we discussed. You can create a table with a syntax called create table, table name, and then the corresponding column names, and then the corresponding data types, and close the parenthesis so that you can create the table. And if you want to query the table, so example, if I create it under use test, already test database is there. Yeah, use test is there. So I already under use test, do I create this table? Let's create this table under test. Already table is present, so you cannot create the table which is already present. So now if I run the sp help on that particular emp table, you will be able to see what is the table name, and then the corresponding columns, and then the corresponding data types that is present to that table, correct? So if you see here, right, emp table, and the owner is dbo schema, user table because created by user itself is a user defined table, and created date, if you see, right, when it is created also it is giving you. So that is created on 2022 20 at the August. At that time we created this table in this database. So different columns that are present are employee id, employee name, salary, department number, and the corresponding data types. So what you need to know is create the table, and if you want to see the entire schema structure of the table, then there is a command that is available in SQL Server, sp underscore help, and then the corresponding table name, which will help you to give the details about the table, and then the columns, and then the data types, and then the lengths of the tables, whether it's a null, whether it's a non-null. All these details will be available with the sp underscore help command. Okay, so already we learned how you can drop the table and everything. Okay, now, yeah, so numerical, just to concentrate more on the different data types, right? So different data types, as I said, any table that you create, if you want to feed the column with a integer type of a data, I mean to say 1 2 3 4 5 6, it is an integer type of a data, then you have to use that particular column name and then the int as the your data type, right? And if you want to input any name values, Sanjana, Halaya, all these are the string values, right? For that you have to use a data type called as the varchar or char. What is the difference between char and varchar? Varchar is the variable characters, right? And the char is defined characters. I mean to say, example, particular employee name column is there. Under employee name column, you are already pretty much sure that my employee name will never ever exceed than the 10 characters. I mean to say, whatever the names that you're gonna incorporate or induce into employee name column, it never ever exceed that criteria is already defined in the business itself, that it never going to exceed than the 10 characters. Then that makes sense to use the character, and with the 10 character open parenthesis close parenthesis as a 10, then any employee name values you're going to induce, which never ever allow you to it will never ever allocate any, always it will allocate only the character of 10 by default, whether you incorporate of 8 characters, 7 characters, 6 characters employee name, but always in the allocation in the backend of the SQL server it is 10 fixed. But in the varchar, right, varchar means variable of characters. That is, even though you mentioned as a varchar 10 as the data type, okay, but you inputted a values of a employee name, Sanjana, Halaya, all these different names that you incorporated or inputted the values. In that case, based, even though you allocated as a varchar 10, whenever you input a values of ABC or name of ABC, only three letters, right? ABC is a three letter. But in the backend, right, even though you mentioned a varchar 10, it will allow till the characters of a 10, but since you are passing only three characters of a data, the consumption of the memory in the backend of the SQL server only three characters. That is the speciality. But if you passed the 8 characters employee name, then it consumption of memory allocation for that particular employee name is 8 characters. It is not, it is never ever use 10 characters, even though you defined as a 10 characters, because the varchar is always variable. It is varies based on the input values that you gonna give to that particular column. So that's the difference between char and varchar. That is very important, which you need to know, because that is one of the basic interview question. What is the data type? A char character type and varchar type. Varchar both will allow the string data type values for the input, but what is the actual difference between char and varchar? That is one of the interview question you need to know. Okay. And int and big int, more or less it's the same, it's just the hash bytes are different. Okay, there's nothing much you need to know about big int and integer. It's common one, better you use always integer. In some cases you can use the big int also. And date and time, right? So if you are giving the date, only the date 9/10/25, so this is the date that you are giving, then the date data type you should use. And you are using the timestamp also, 1927 is the timestamp, right? Then you can use the time as the data type. So these are the different data types that is present in the SQL server. Now it's almost 3 minutes left with my next meeting, so we can good to close the session today. So what are all the things that we covered? We covered the databases, how you can create, drop, system commands, and the commands, different data types. The data types we covered the numerical. Numerical is nothing but the okay, we will cover some of the decimal also tomorrow. Decimal we will cover tomorrow, I will mention here, tomorrow we will cover. So integer, and then the varchar, which is very important, and characters, and then the we covered the big int also. So we covered, these are the different data types that is available in SQL server, right? So we'll end the session today. Till here we will start from different other data types that is present in the SQL server. And then also next one is constraint, which we gonna cover right after the data types explanation. Anybody has any question so far? Whatever we discussed, quick one if you have anything, or tomorrow we can discuss further if you have any questions. Okay, thank you all. Bye.
Sir,
Yeah, tell me. Alaya.
yeah,
Yeah, tell me. Any question?
sir, there is any possible to creating a
Hmm.
table as manually?
Table?
Sorry, there is any possibilities creating table as manually?
Manually means?
As manually, how to create without writing query is possible.
With
Manual means entering data.
no, see, if that doesn't make any sense, right? Uh,
Hello,
yeah. I'm answering to your
hello,
question. So without creating a table, if you are inserting a data, that is it's no use, right? It's not possible. You have to create the table. After that only you can insert the data into table.
that's not my question.
No, you cannot create. That is my answer. So you cannot create. I mean, unless you create the table, you cannot insert the data. Only there is one option which is called as a DTS, where you can import, export. You can do. Example: there is a Excel file that is present in your local machine. You are having a 10 rows of a Excel. Sorry, 10 rows and 10 columns of the Excel, which is having a data in that Excel. There is an option in SQL Server. You can import the that particular Excel into your database. There is an option I can show you tomorrow. So you can import that particular Excel, and when you import that, it will create the table structure as is, which is present in the Excel. Or you can create, import the
Yeah,
notepad, you can import the some other files, import export you can do. But that will create the table with the structure of the source file in the sense whether it's a Excel, CSV, or notepad, or whatever, right? All those kind of a structure which is you are having as a source can be created as a table. But without creation of the tables, without queries, this is the only option that you can create the tables. But unless and until you create the tables, you cannot insert the data into tables. You got what I'm trying to
yeah,
say?
okay,
Okay. Anybody has any other question?
yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all.